In this chapter, we will learn how to create elegant masks in Photoshop using a variety of pen tool techniques in combination with work paths and selections. So now it's time to finally start working on the Japanese crest design that we have here. And the way that we're going to do this is by creating masks inside Photoshop so we can have a lot of control over them and then bringing those masks into ZBrush. So the first thing I want you guys to do, if you're following along with a tutorial that you purchased online, you can just go to your downloadable material. You should see a folder structure, something like this. Go to Images, Images, Texture Maps, PSD, Seth, and then open up this crest base PSD. And if you have this, you can just skip ahead to about the 6-minute mark in this tutorial to pick back up. But if you're following from YouTube, what I want you to do is go to Google or any search engine, type in my name, Seth Thompson, then ArtStation. And this will take you to my ArtStation page, which you can also get to from the description underneath the chapter in the YouTube link. And then just find the Amulet image here, click on that, and it'll have a bunch of different images in here that you can check out. There's images in here that you're actually going to want to save off. Eventually, you're going to want to have this image and this other image above it. And then we also want to save off all of these things that say Crest Mask A, all the way down through Crest Mask G. And then eventually later, you're going to need these other maps as well. So I recommend you save them all off, but for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to save the current ones. And in the end, what you'll see, for example, this image, we don't need this for the tutorial, but this is something I created in Photoshop. You can see that we have a lot of control and we're using Photoshop tools in order to get really nice shapes, which are sometimes hard to do in freehand in ZBrush. So just come in here, and what I recommend is just, if you're using Windows, just right click on the image, say Save Image As, and find a location that you want to save that to. I have a folder structure set up called From ArtStation. I recommend you guys have a location where you can put your texture maps, and that's where I'm going to save these to. By default, it says Seth Thompson Crest Mask A. I think this will work fine. Just keep that default name. And then just go through one by one and save each of these off. You'll see the thing below it, Crest Mask B, Save Image As. Just go through one by one. I'm going to speed up the video here and just quickly do this. Okay, now that we have those saved off, let's go to Photoshop. I'm currently running Photoshop CC 2018. You can use pretty much any version that you want. So File, Open, and let's find those masks that we had. I'm just going to select all of them and going to open all those. So now we have them all in here. You can see Crest A, etc. What I would want you guys to do now is we're going to copy all these into one image. So each of these were saved at, I think it's almost 1K, the image size. So each of them will stack on top of each other perfectly. So just go through, and I recommend you go B, C, D, etc., all the way through G, copy, and then paste into A. So I'm going to come down to here, I'm pressing Control All on my keyboard to select everything, Control C to copy, and then I'm just going to go back to Crest Mask A, and I'm going to unlink that here. And I'm going to say Control V on the keyboard to paste that in here. So now you see background in the layer one. What I recommend too, just so you don't get confused later, is keep the naming order of this. So this bottom one, let's call that A, just like the name that I had on ArtStation, and the next one B. It's going to be pretty important to keep that because that's the order that we'll be using these maps later. So again, now you go down to C, Control A on the keyboard to select everything, Control C to copy, go back to your A image, Control V to paste that in here, and just quickly change that name to C. Once again, I'm going to speed up the video and just do this over and over until we have them all in here. Okay, now you can see we have all of those images in one location. For example, if we come here and click through here, you can kind of see that they're all stacking nicely on top of one another. What I recommend just to clean up our Photoshop interface is to go through and just shut down all the um, other windows so we don't have them kind of cluttering things up and making stuff confusing. So we're just going to get those out of here. I'm going to minimize this one. And then I'm actually going to save this as a PSD file because I think it'll be useful for us to have crest masks. And if we need to make adjustments, we can later. I'm going to expand this a little bit just so that we can get in there and really see what's going on. Also, I realize there's one image that we forgot to save from ArtStation, so let's go back. And if you scroll down right below here, I also have an image of the concept, so let's go ahead and save that. Right click, save image as, and I think we just call it crest concept. And we'll go back to Photoshop. Let's open that up. And this is at the same resolution as well. Control A to copy, to select everything, Control C to copy it. I'm just going to close this right now. And then let's just paste that right in here. Control V. So now we have our concept image in here as well. Let's just call that concept. And I'm going to move that down here a little bit below. In fact, I'm just going to make that our background image. So one thing that's kind of cool in Photoshop, you guys can click on these independent layers separately if you want. You can just drag your mouse, like click, hold, and then slide down and do all the layers at once. I enjoy doing that. But anyways, what I want to show you guys is as I was working on this different design, I'm going to go back to ArtStation one more time. I want to show you a reference that I was looking at. So basically, whenever I was working on this design, I went online and, as I always do, I researched a bunch of different stuff to try and find kind of an interesting Japanese crest design. And I like how a lot of the things focus on nature, all these different interesting leaf crest, etc. And then how some stuff is just kind of really cool, interesting designs and swirls and patterns. So I wanted to kind of do a combo of that, something that felt naturey like this, with something that was a bit more abstract. And that's how I kind of decided to come up with my design that you see here. And this is just something that I was sketching while I was at work in between my multitude of meetings that I have as a supervisor. And, it's not super accurate in the design here. And that's okay because what we're going to do next is I'll show you how you can have really good control over these different shapes so that you can make something that looks more crisp like this. And also too, obviously, since I was illustrating this, I wasn't worried about making symmetry because I know I could do it in Photoshop. But anyways, we're going to focus on how we can use a couple tools over here using the pen tool and anchor tool and a few other things so that we can get really nicely controlled maps. I'm not going to take you through every single step of the way how I did this entire thing, but I'm going to show you how to do it. The other thing too, just to kind of quickly show you what's up, is we're going to be using each of these different images later in Photoshop as masks to displace our image. And you might be asking yourself, why do I have these different kind of separations and what do those do? Remember how when we were sculpting the details on this piece, how I came through and I did kind of like that overlapping layering? We're essentially going to be mimicking that with these different masks in here. So for example, the difference between here and here is that once we have all these masks in photo or ZBrush that we're going to use, is we'll be able to switch between these different masks and I won't have to go through by hand and change where I need to do stuff, and then I can use a brush to make the difference between those different leaf sections. That might not make sense now, so let's just go ahead and jump right into it, and I'll show you how I ended up actually making all these really nice accurate details. So I'm just going to make a new layer. Let's click that, new layer. And you know what? I'm also going to go down here, drag this, make a new copy of the background. Just because this white is a little bit tough on my eyes, I'm going to change the background color of the screen to gray. Because if you guys are doing this later on your own, if you make your own design, you can be looking at that design for a long time if you draw it out. And gray is much easier on the eyes. So I just changed my white layer to a multiply, and I have that nice gray background now. So anyways, let's zoom in. Let's say we wanted to make the shape that we see here, this leaf shape, and we wanted to have a lot of control over that. What I guys want you to do is come over here and you're going to select the pen tool. If you don't see the pen tool in here, just right click on any of these icons. It brings up different things, then you will find it eventually. So find the pen tool, and we're just going to click out a few points here. Whenever you're done, you'll see to the right-hand side of the pen that little circle. See how it says plus? Like if you click on something now, you can add another pen to it spot, or over here you can say minus, and that'll detach from it, stuff like that. But we end up closing this off once we have this. And then what I want you guys to do is right-click on here, come to Convert Point Tool. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start dragging these out. And essentially, this is just making Bezier curves for all of the different pieces. So we're going to kind of use these curves in order to trace the outline of this so that we can get something really, really accurate. And one thing I want to show you is, for example, whenever you first drag this out, notice how both sides of this are nice and even, which allows you to affect both sides simultaneously. After you do that first adjustment, if you come through and then you click on another one, it starts to act independently. That can be useful, especially whenever you're around like a corner up here. Sometimes it's not useful for an edge here because you want to make sure that things feel really smooth. Like for example, if I was to try and match this, you'd see this weird wonky shape. So generally when I'm out here in a location like that, I try to make sure that this feels really even. And then, sorry, we got to make sure we don't switch to another tool. And then, yeah, we're just going to keep kind of playing with this until we can hopefully get something that matches these shapes nicely. I think over here we're going to need another point in a minute, so I'll probably end up adding that in as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one just because literally this is for the purpose of demonstration to show you guys how to do this. So that you'll know how to just do your own. So for example, let's go right click again back to pen tool, and now you can see how it says plus. Let's add one more in here. And the other thing we're going to do too is sometimes when you add a new one, you need to be able to select that and then move it over. So if you come over here to this tool, the direct selection tool, we can drag a marquee selection around this, and then we can click and move this over. That's pretty useful. And you can even actually select the points and whatnot as you're using this too. I'm going to come back to our pen tool one more time, convert point tool, because I want to drag this out fresh, get the handle smaller, pull this other one out a bit. And now I think this is pretty good. I mean, it's not 100% accurate, but I think it does what we want. So now we need to actually get a selection here so we can fill this in. So over here, you see you've got layers, channels, and paths. Just come over here to paths. You'll notice that there's a work selection available. So what I want you to do is you right click this and then you say make selection. Don't worry about this feather radius, just say OK. And now you can see that it's converted our pin selection to a marquee tool. So we'll just make a new layer here. And let's go to our gradient bucket, switch it to just like a white color, and we'll just fill that in. So there you go. I'm going to press Control on my D on my keyboard to deselect this, but that's pretty much how I went through and then got all these really nice shapes on here, one by one through each of these things. So it took me a little bit of time, but it gave me something that's going to be really accurate, that's going to allow us to have a ton of control whenever we come in here and we start doing all of our nice detailed sculpting. So the other thing that we need to have is, by hand, sometimes I'll come in and I'll draw the little ridge lines like you see in here for these little cuts. But other times when you have something like this, you need a bit more control because if you're trying to draw that by hand, it gets a little bit sloppy. So I'm going to show you how to do that too using the pen tool again. Now, before we do this, I want you to press B on your keyboard so that we can go to your brush pen and just kind of draw and see what you get. I put it on white right now. Maybe if you don't have it set already, make sure you have something set like this, like a basic solid brush setting. So now let's switch back to our pen tool. And let's say we want to draw this design right here. So I'm going to just do as we were doing previously and add a couple clicks. And then once again, use this convert point tool and pull out some of these lines to try and get this swirl shape going on. Again, for demonstration purposes, I'm not going to do this perfectly. Um, the main part is that you understand the technique. So let's say this was close to what we want. I'll just zoom in here a bit so we can see it some more. What you can do now, again, is you go to Paths, and this time when you right-click, there's another thing called Stroke Path. So click that, and by default, mine's set to Brush, but you can set it to all these different settings. I recommend you guys try these out. But let's use Brush, and that brush that we were using just a minute ago, what it does is it applies it right to this line. So that's pretty cool. And the thing is like, let's say that last line was too thick. Going back to our brush setting, we can just decrease the size of that. And then let's do this again. And now you can see that it has the thinner size. So it respects the size of whatever tool that you have that you're doing the stroke path with. And then it does it very accurately, because if we're trying to do this by hand, even with a stylist where you're trying to trace something, it's really hard to kind of get it looking nice. See here, you can even get all these kind of funky bends and stuff. So yeah, that's just a great tool to use, and I love using that. So anyways, those are the two techniques basically that I use to create all the different layers that we saw in here a minute ago. I'm just going to turn off these others. I'll turn all these back on. So pretty much every layer that you see here was used creating those techniques. Some of them I did a little bit by hand, but most of them I was using that thing to get it as accurate as possible. So anyways, what we need to do now is actually go back to ZBrush. And with our model that we have, we need to get a screenshot of the UVW maps that we're working on. So I still have my Z plugin open up to UV master, and I'm going to press flatten. The thing is right now we have a bunch of subdivision levels on this, and it won't let you use UV master without that. So what we can do is say work on clone. What that's going to do is it's going to make a new subtool up here. So I'm going to click that, and it makes a new subtool. Like, you can switch between the original high res one and then the low res. The other thing it does too is it adds a skin shade material. I'm not sure why. I'm just going to switch that back to matte cap. So now you can see it takes the lowest subdivision level of that original amulet and makes that as a clone. And we can mess with the UVs on that and then copy them and then send them back over to this high poly one. So I don't really have to adjust the UVs too much. I just need to get a screenshot of them. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten them. And again, it's not centered. I don't know why I keep switching back. But anyways, that's okay. I'm going to press W on my keyboard and then recenter this. I need to turn off symmetry. So I pressed X. That's why it was kind of trying to go multiple directions. So I'm just going to kind of center this as best I can. I think that looks good. I'm going to switch to just a brush mode. And now I'm going to take a screenshot. I'm going to press Alt on my keyboard and then print screen on the keyboard. And now I'm going to take that back to Photoshop, File New, Create, and then I'm going to Control V to paste that in here. So what I want to do now is I basically kind of want to crop around this UV template. And I'm just going to use our marquee selection tool by pressing M on the keyboard and dragging out a selection around this. I'll get it close to perfect, but not completely perfect. I'm going to say image crop. And then now we basically have our UV template from ZBrush. So what we're going to do now is actually really quick, I'm going to go back to ZBrush. I'm going to unflatten this. I'm going to copy these UVs, and then I'm going to select our high poly mesh, and I'm going to say paste UVs. And now it's putting the UVs on the base of this. So going back to Photoshop, now what we want to do is get the symbols that we created over here onto this. So I'm going to dock this or drag it up so they're not docking onto one another. Actually just going to decrease the size on that a bit. So what we want to do is we want to select all the layers that are on our crest mask, all the ones that we want to bring over. And for us, that's pretty much all of them, all the different masks that I've created for you that you save from ArtStation. So just click on G and then hold down Shift and then click here to select all of these. And then what you can do is just simply left click and then drag over here to our other window. And then that drops everything in here. Now everything's a little bit too small, so I'm going to increase the size of this canvas image size. It's 852 right now, so let's change this up to, how about 1200, something like that. And let's drag this over again. Cool. So now we have it here. One thing I'm going to do just to make this stuff a little simpler is I'm going to click this folder icon, and that puts all of those alpha maps into one group. And I'm just going to call this alpha. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, let's give it a, I think it's screen, so that we can see our white icons on top of this. So what we need to do is basically we got to kind of figure out how to get this centered so that this is going to sit inside uh, our model. So we're going to want it to sit in here nicely, kind of like something that'll fill out this section, which means that we're going to have to just quickly do a test to see if this is going to work. So what I'm going to do is we're click back here again. I'm going to minimize this other one because we don't need that anymore. And maybe really quickly too, let's just save a new file with this one. Save as, and we'll call this, one moment. Let's do that again. File save as. And this one we're going to call crest masks for use. That way I just know that these are the ones that we're going to save off and use eventually. So since I have the root node of this alpha selected, I'll be able to scale this simultaneously. So I'm going to scale this down a little bit to try and fit what I think is going to be a nice shape inside here. Maybe just a little bit more. All right. So what I want us to do really quickly is we're going to switch this back from screen, the blending mode, to normal. I'm also going to give us a black background. I'm going to press G, and then I'm going to fill that. And then I'm going to hide this background. So what we want to do right now is we're going to say File, Save As. I'm going to make a new folder in here. Crest Mask for ZBrush. And this first one I'm just going to call Position Test. So we'll save that. And let's go back into ZBrush. And what I want us to do now is we're going to go to Alpha. I'm going to drag that over here, and I'm going to say Import. We're going to find that alpha that we just made, that test alpha, the position test one. Let's open that. And now we have it in our scene. And you can see here it's the active alpha for a standard brush. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go down here under masking for this subtool. And let's say mask by alpha. Click that and then just click this button. And now you can see that the mask is plopped right on top of here, and this is almost perfect. I don't think we need to adjust this at all. This is great. So basically, in the next chapter, we're going to start using this to sculpt out all the details of the crest design, and I'll just kind of show you, for example, what we'll do. You can probably guess already, we'll use a combination of the inflate tool along with the inflate balloon tool, and then some different other kind of hand masking techniques to go through and start sculpting out these details with a ton of control by using these alpha maps that we've created. So I'm just going to undo this so we get it back to what it was originally. Final step that we need to do to prepare everything is we need to save out every alpha that's in here, so A through G. So what I recommend for you guys is just literally go through step by step, save one after the other, and save them to that one folder, and you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it Crest Mask A, and then B and C, etc. And I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video again so that you don't have to watch me doing this over and over. All right, now that you have all of these saved, we want to import all of these into our scene file for ZBrush, and then we'll be ready to start sculpting. So let's just do that really quick. This time, luckily, we can just do them all at once. Just select all those, and you'll import those into your scene, and then you'll see here that we'll be able to come in, and as we were doing a few minutes ago, we're going to be able to say mask by alpha, then you'll be able to click on this next one, mask by alpha, and we're going to be doing the stepping and layering process in the next chapter. This tutorial and its downloadable content is available now on my QBrush, Gumroad, and Steam stores, which are linked in the description below. Watch the following video to see what is included with your purchase. If you purchase this tutorial, here is a preview of all the bonus content you will receive. Firstly, in ZBrush, I've included 3 different versions of the Amulet. 1, my final sculpted version with all the ornamentational details and destruction. 2, just the sculptural details like ornamentation. 3, a version without anything so you could follow along and create your own during the process. Secondly, you will receive the final keyshot file demonstrated here, which contains all of the texture maps, lighting, and everything that is shown during the tutorial. The thing that I find really useful about this is having access to the material graph and seeing the complex custom materials that are created during the tutorial. This will really help you with understanding how to create your own complex materials in Keyshot. Next, you will receive all of the final PSD files showcased throughout the tutorial, including this gold-painted Mount Fuji design with all of my different layering processes, as well as the custom crest base that is used later for sculpting in ZBrush based off of masks. Also, you'll get all of the final texture maps that are showcased during the tutorial, such as these, which are all tileable. You will also receive all of the original videos in downloaded format at their full high definition resolution. Also, I have included dozens of high quality personal art images such as my Dark Souls 3 High Lord of Walnor fan art, which inspired me to create the Amulet tutorial to showcase the techniques I learned and developed during the process. Whether you purchase this tutorial or follow along for free on Facebook or YouTube, thank you for your continued support, and I cannot wait to see the epic amulets you create soon.